Hey guys, Jengar here. Welcome to today's realistic review in which we are taking a look at the red tail, the P-51D-30, sitting at 5.0 battle rating in realistic battle. The Mustangs are a fantastic line that are absolutely enjoyable, but they have never been meta friendly and they have a problem with their rudder at certain speeds, makes them roll off center. And thus it is quite complicated at the fast-paced lower ends of your dives when you have to roll to get your guns on target to get a kill, because you will roll those guns off your target and it will be very difficult to get the shots in. And for the most experienced people who fly a lot and who fly these things regularly, it's not too much of a problem. But for anybody else it is quite the getting used to, let's say. Normally I'm also one of those veterans, but when I started to fly this, it was one of the first planes I flew after an almost 2-month hiatus, where I was busy with my son and with other stuff, this regular life, right? And I came back and I flew this and I was like, God damn, man, I want to get some guns on target, but it was difficult. It made me realize how much of an impediment that rudder problem is for the average player or beginners or people who've been playing the game for a year or so, go to the United States, start flying Mustangs, and suddenly they have this rudder problem, and it's going to turn people off from Mustangs. That's unfortunate. They're lovely planes. This plane also looks awesome and fantastic coming from high altitude, but you need a little bit of time to set her up, and then with these Mustangs you're going to have to make sure that you do not roll too much when you get to your firing solution. Otherwise you will roll your guns off the target and you will miss. So keep that in mind. Now, before we get into the details of this plane, do make sure to like the video, leave me a comment. It really helps the video a lot, engagement. That's what makes YouTube tick. So please do that, and if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to click the subscribe button. You'll be getting a lot more content that is coming up in the coming weeks and months and years. So, and for the rest, do make sure to check out my locals and my Rumble. The links will be in the description. Maximum speed in the D30 at sea level without web is 570 kilometers an hour, with web 611. At 4,500 meters this is 518 without, 537 with. And finally at 6,500 meters you can take her to 480 without web and 510 with web. This is in indicated airspeed without web, without Mach, sorry. Top speed in the dive is 865 before she redlines. Now that is a big increase from the D5, which was much closer to 800. And the rip speed, it's very difficult to rip this plane in a dive. You get drag coming in, it doesn't accelerate too much anymore, and even from 10,000 meters, which I tried after it didn't succeed from 8,000 meters, it is difficult to rip this plane in a dive. So I did both times actually. I got the 900 plus, so that's interesting how that mechanic works, but it is what it is, and it's good because it's difficult to rip this plane in a straight dive down with the nose to the seabed. Anyway, but still 900 is quite the speed that you can achieve in this plane in a dive, and it's difficult to rip her, so she's very good in the dive. Control stiffening also kicks in very late. You get the first little bit of compression in the ailerons at 600 kilometers an hour, and then the second one at 750, but they're very small, barely noticeable. You do also notice that in the roll rate she starts off quite stiff and you think this roll rate in this plane is not good, but then after 450 she starts to get into her window. So from 450 to 600 is your ideal window for rolling and maneuvering in the P-51. High speeds thus. The stall speed in this plane is 130, which is also quite nice. Not too bad, and the firepower in this plane is decent. It has 650 cals. That is the regular setup for the Americans, but at this battle rating of 5.0 you do get to that point where many enemy planes have at least two 20mm and probably 4. so that is a lot more firepower than a 650 cals, I think, on average, as these things are also in the wing for the Americans, and you usually get 3 on target unless you're in the exact conversions that you use, and then maybe you have all 6 on target, but that doesn't happen all the time. But anyway, 650 cals works fine. The ammo loads in this plane is for 2 guns, it's very good with 400 rounds per gun, and the outer 2 pairings have 270 rounds per gun, which is good. You does have 6 12.7 M2 Browning machine guns, and with those ammo loads that I just mentioned, I used a 600 meter convergence, and I basically do that for all my American planes. I want to stay relevant. If I want to scare people in a head-on, roll off in time, but if you have a 300 and 400 convergence, you're not relevant in that head-on. It just doesn't work, does it? 600 is quite ideal for that. Also for most of the closer work, you will be fine with 600 meters. And when you get to 300 meters, I usually make a maneuver to get a better shot again. It's very close. Let's see. We have bombs on this plane, 2,000 pounders. We have napalm. You have rockets, HVAR and others. And you have combos between the napalm and the HVAR rockets. So there's some very nice loads out there for ground RB as well. Makes this plane viable for ground RB. Very nice versatility in there. You also have the performance of the plane, of course. The acceleration in a straight line is very good in a dive as well. The plane does need a little bit of time to wind up. Just in the initial 5 seconds in a dive, it's not fantastic, but as he speeds up, he becomes better and better. Up until the point, and that is about after 750, where the drag starts to kick in, and despite the very thin wings, there is enough drag to slow the acceleration down in this plane. You have excellent energy retention in the horizontal. In the vertical, it's great as well. You have a good engine in the plane, and the performance in the vertical is great. So this is a very good plane for stall maneuvers, and that's nice. Energy fighting is one of its main roles. The climb rate in the plane is decent to good as well, which is nice to have. It's not the greatest though, and I would say that she's probably closer to decent than good overall, but it is one of the better Mustangs to climb with, apart from the age, of course. Turn time in the plane is average, decent with flaps. Flaps rip off only at 700 kilometers an hour, and I don't mean that you need to in high G situations at 650 need to deploy the flaps, and that I'm saying in this case that is possible. I usually test it with the flaps deployed and then see where they rip off. When you emergency deploy them at 400 kilometers an hour, you'll be fine. If you'll emergency deploy them at closer to that 700 with when you're pulling a turn, yeah, that's not gonna work. Then they're probably gonna rip off at 650 or maybe even 600. So keep that in mind. A roll rate in the plane is average to decent as well. It rolls off center, as I said, from around 500 kilometers an hour, and the roll rate is average before 450, and it becomes decent after 450. So it has a small window when it doesn't roll off center, and when it is decent roll rate, and that is from 450 to around 500. It's a very small window, that's ideal, but yeah, it is what it is, isn't it? Overall maneuverability is decent at higher speeds above 450 and average below 450. Overheating in the plane is bad. Even at 100% you will overheat the plane, let alone with wet. She will quickly overheat that way, and she does cool off, but the oil cools off quicker than the water. The water stays overheated longer, much longer. So be aware of that. Durability in the plane is average. That I say that she can take a bit of damage, but I say that because she doesn't fly very well with damage. If you have damage on one wing, it is difficult to control the Mustang. Let's say that. The repair cost in this plane with 10,163 Silver Lions is atrocious. It's one of the highest at 5.0 battle rating. And yeah, there's nothing to say there, it's just bad. But the rewards in the plane make up for it. Not in the research point department. You have a 332% modifier with a 1.66 multiplier, and the Silver Lion rewards are 330% for the modifier with 2.2 in the multiplier. So that is excellent. That is one of the best Silver Lion rewards you get in a plane at 5.0 battle rating, and thus the repair cost is compensated with the Silver Lion earnings you can get in this plane. But yeah, as I said, man, it is not the easiest plane to fly when you look at it. With that rudder problem, and as he starts to roll off center, she is difficult to control, and her indicated roles are boom and zooming and energy fighting. You can cuss with it, you can do some close air support if you want, because of the bomb loads and the rockets and napalm combos with rockets. Very nice, all in all. She can't do that job, and you can take her into ground RB, all fine and good. But in air RB, you basically want to side climb in this plane and then start to boom and zoom and energy fight accordingly when you can make that switch. And she's good at both roles, but I say she might perform the energy fighting a little bit better, as you don't want to, with stall maneuvers and stuff like that, you get into the speeds where she doesn't roll off center more often. And thus you will not have the guns pulled off target too many times. When you're boom and zooming and your target makes a split ass or it turns to the left or the right, you have to maneuver as well, and then your shots will definitely be off, and that is very unfortunate. She's definitely not a turn fighter, although she does have one or two good turns in her. When she flies 600, for example, and you want to make 2 turns, she's in her ideal window. She will slow down, but as she slows down, you will go below 450. You will leave your ideal window and you won't have those turns anymore, and you will be outmaneuvered most of the time. Also because the roll rate isn't great below 450. So that's the scoreboard of the match. We've got Terror of the Sky, Bulletproof, 36,000 Silver Lions and 6,000 research points. I'll see you in the conclusion. Hey guys, so here we are after the match. The Mustangs are brilliant, the red tail is beautiful, but there is a rudder problem. I had it with the D5. I was flying a little bit more often back then, so I didn't have quite that impact of that roll, because when you're rusty or when you're a beginner to average player, you will have problems with that roll rate. It will pull you off constantly, and you might not be aware that that is the problem. It's not you in this plane. It's not you. You got to keep her steady and don't move her when you're in your final approaches. And you just got to hope that the enemy doesn't move. If the enemy does move, just go back up and forget about it, because you will not get the guns on target too well at high speeds, right? If you are under 450, or sorry, under 500, you will not have that problem. And you will be fine when it comes to the rolling to get that shot. But at the higher speeds, above 450, 500, you will have that problem, and you got to keep that in mind, because it's freaking annoying. That is true. But yeah, she's a fast plane, also in a dive, fantastic handling in a dive. She is awesome at that. Great install maneuvers. You have the 6 gun. It's not the best firepower, but it is what it is. For the I've actually completely forgot that during the review, but I gotta do it here. You have the regular later game belts with the default universal ground, tracers and stealth, and the best belt at the moment is tracer. And stealth is definitely viable for the surprise factor. And Universal also has incendiary in every round, but it seems that the tracers have the most punch when it comes to fire, and they just have AP and incendiary in every shell, and that just works. A little bit of fireworks might obscure a little bit where you're shooting. I didn't used to like that, but now these days I don't mind it too much. So yeah, be aware of that. But I use tracers. And stealth could be nice for the surprise factor. That's always nice. People don't realize that you're shooting at them. Gives you a little bit longer on the target, which you need with 50 cals, right? So guys, this plane also climbs decently well. She, as I said, with the speed, she can maneuver decently when she's in her ideal window from 450 to 600. And all in all, the rewards are good, so that compensates for the repair cost. I really like the Mustangs, but I wish that rudder problem was a little bit less pronounced. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button, become part of this community. If you are already a subscriber, don't forget to like the video, do leave me a comment, and if you really feel like helping out today, make sure to share the video with your friends and let them know about the channel.